Hi everyone, this is Dr. Raquel Butler from Integrated Veterinary Therapeutics.
And Sophie Vandenberg from Equine Postulate. And we welcome you to the Equine Functional Posture Podcast, your ultimate source for insights into the influence of functional posture on biomechanics, health, and overall well-being of horses.
Whether you're a seasoned equestrian, an equine professional, or simply a horse enthusiast, this podcast is designed to help you understand the critical aspects of functional posture.
Tune in each week as we discuss practical tips, delve into expert interviews, and explore the latest research in the impact of functional posture on equine anatomy, physiology, movement, and more.
Let's create a world where we empower our horses to be in a mental, emotional, and physical balance. Hi everyone, welcome to today's discussion about play and the missing link in posture learning and connection. This is an area that I was thinking a lot about after my interactions with Ellie Mae on the weekend, and how at times she needed to kind of just decompress and have a little buck around the round yard and get it out, and then she was able to come back and into a learning space or a responsive space. And so we often don't encourage this in our horses, and we're often taught to, always keep them in a relaxation. And it really made me see the value in that for Ellie, and how much better she was when she would come back from that space, and how important it is. But also Jelly has shown me aspects of that, which we will discuss as well. So yeah, how are you going today, Soph?
Hi, Raquel. Going really well. This is definitely a conversation that we have actually talked about quite a lot of times, and the topic of play comes up lots from people in the course, and also just, it's something that you enjoy seeing. I know I certainly do. I really love seeing my horses play. I love seeing other horses play. I love horses gallop, like watching them gallop as a group and then pull up and interact, even if they're big movements or they're small. There's a lot of nuance to play that we're going to get to discuss today.
Yeah, definitely. And I have an example of it this morning. Like, I call it mental health day. And so Henry is off grass, and so him and Jelly aren't they're in a yard without grass. And Jelly, if I let him out, he'd just go and eat. But Henry needs the time to like express himself. So I can tell when he's getting a bit antsy. He just I don't know, he just starts to get a bit grumpy, and I can just tell that he's like in need of a run. And it's interesting because when I let him out, he will run around for a good 10-15 minutes, and he stimulates it in the other horses. So he could just go out and eat grass, but he wants to run, and he holds himself up in a really nice posture and does like big trots across the paddock and little circles, and they buck and kick out at each other, but they're never aiming at each other. Like, I watch them be careful not to actually hit each other. They're just playing and having a bit of fun. And then I'll bring him back in, and he's happy to come back in, and for the next week he'll be happy again. So for me, that's an example of play. Like, it's voluntary. He's exploring movement, he's exploring the paddock. He is creative in the way that they move with each other. They're engaged, they're having fun. Like, there's a lot of aspects of play in that moment. What other things would you say you see in horses playing?
So play, they look like they're having fun. They look like they're engaged either with you or, with the other horse or multiple horses that they're with. They're usually very aware, as opposed to when you see horses that are not really, in themselves or in the space that they're in. You get that big difference. And you certainly observe that the movements that they go through, like what you were saying with Jelly, they're creative, but they're not repetitive, and they're voluntary, not forced. So, they're often in that kind of situation, they're unconditioned behaviors. You haven't tried to shape the kind of behavior, you're just seeing what comes out. And sometimes you can see play when you are having a reciprocal moment of like conditioned conditioned behaviors, and the horse offers them to you, sometimes with a different energy. You know, they're bringing their own level of creativity to something, when they offer you expression. So there's a lot to it, and where we can see it in their expression as well. You know, there's
Yeah.
just so many different expressions you see, particularly, I think, you know, their eyes and their ears, where they're looking and where they have their attention. And yeah, it's also something that I've noticed in Charlie, as a side note, is that his muzzle, when he's having a really good time with his friend, often looks more intense. Not in a painful situation, but he's really got quite a focused
Like
face when
expression.
he's racing around. And it's just, I think, a variable of, you know, just what facial expression means and how important context is as well for that too.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, like recently, so I've been trying to figure out for a while, like what's Jelly's fun thing to do? You know, like how can I do play with him? Because he seems to he gets excited when I'm jumping, so I don't know if that for him is a good or bad thing, like if it's a stress response or a fun thing, but he appears to get excited about it. But like for example, when I take him for a walk out on the road, that's not really fun for him. He actually is quite anxious in those moments. And so I've been trying to figure it out for a while. Like he does enjoy being ridden. Um, it often, you know, he likes that interaction with you. But anyway, a few weeks ago, inspired by a clinic with Kim from Heartland Equestrian, I came home and I thought, you know, I'm going to try Liberty with Jelly. And I took him in the round yard and I thought he's just going to want to eat grass because he doesn't have grass. And I took him in the round yard. I had treats and I haven't really worked with him with treats before. Like he does his exercises, like his mobilizations and stuff, but I don't train him with treats really unless something's really hard. So anyway, I go in and then I start to ask him to do things like walk and then I ask him to trot and then I asked him for all the things that we've done on the ground, like, can you move your shoulders? Can you move your hind end? And he was just like, what else? What else? Like, his little expression and the way he held himself was probably
Yeah.
you know, I'm constantly telling him, come on, pick yourself up, pick up your thoracic sling. And he's like, ugh. But he was just like, oh, holding himself up and lifting through his thoracic sling and engaging his core and asking, what else? What else? And then canter is really difficult for him. And so I asked him, well, if you want, try canter. And he just like popped into it on the one rein and then like come straight back, like, was that good? And he did that. And then on the hard rein, he kind of took off and had a little buck and was like, oh, that's really hard. And I asked him a couple of times and he said, no, it's still really hard. And then on the last time, he like tried to like get it and he offered me a lovely transition. And straight away, I was like, yeah, that was so good. Give him a treat. And his whole expression, like he had so much fun. I have not seen him have that much fun in a session, and I was laughing. And I got Brett,
Yes.
I was like, yelled out to Brett to come up. You have to see this, and he was laughing because it was just so obvious that he was just like, this is so fun. I get treats for doing things, and
Yeah.
so you know now I've kind of found something that initiate. And the next session I had with him, he was more engaged. Like he was more like, what do you want to do today? Kind of it changed his relationship to doing things. And I'm very guilty of getting in the doing the same thing every day. We have to work on your posture, you know, you have to move properly. And I get caught in that. And I think a lot of us do, like just working in the arena. And so we don't ask ourselves how can we create some fun, how can we engage the horse, which is something that a friend said to me recently, that the message that she got from her horses was they want to be engaged and not trained.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's actually something that I often see is aimed towards people who aren't riding Like it's
Yeah.
when people talk about, oh, you know, play is for people who aren't riding, and you have an old horse that you're hoping to, you know, not leave out to the paddock. Like you still want to do things with them, you still want to keep them engaged, but it's an activity for all ages.
Yeah. Young,
And
old, yeah, 100%. We
definitely,
need to create some fun for them.
yeah.
So, what are some of the values of play?
So they would be some of the things we've mentioned. So improved learning, the way Jelly was able to come into that space and engage with you the next time, because some kind of need has been met. So whether that's a need for expression, creativity, and then to come back and be grounded, the ability to direct his focus in a direction where you're leading him is improved. And so I see this quite a lot with foals. I've found very much so that if you create a space where they always feel safe to walk up, you'll often find that through the day, they will at least once or twice come to seek stimulation. And so often, if you can meet them and almost give them as much as they're looking for. So, you know, if someone comes up, I can be like, hey, I'm going to take a break from the foal I'm working with for a moment, and you're going to be next. And I'm going to, you know, they're just like, I want to stick my nose over the door and I want to chew on something and I want to drag your lunch bag across the yard, you know, things like that. I can be like, oh, okay, well, here's a texture and here's another texture. I'm going to let you sniff the flag. Here, have a banana chip. You know, like, do you want to smell the top of my water bottle? Do you want to smell my hand? I'll scratch you for a moment. And then we're both going to like tap on the metal pole and you're going to have a look. And you see the moment that they're like, okay, I've had enough. I'm going to go and munch for a minute. And then the distinct difference that I've seen, probably for a few foals that needed a huge amount of stimulation, like they have a big play drive with their friends out in the yard, they're constantly pushing on somebody. If you can meet them before they come to you, like it's almost like, oh, I've noticed you have a need, I'm going to meet it before you have to get pushy or anything. They just leave. They're like, oh, I've had my fill, I'm going to go. And then when I bring them in, they're totally different, completely different to if you just bring them in, it's their first, they're just like, I have so much it's almost like they're a bucket, and filling the bucket part way means that they just can settle, and then you can use the rest of that space for, you know, directed learning, etc. So and I used to have the opinion that because there's, and I still do it to an element, there's only so much that you can do in a session because you can only absorb so much information, and that's proven. But at the same time, just like they've discovered with kids, in play, you have faster absorption of knowledge. So you have stronger dendritic pathways and they become myelinated. So they get a fatty sheath, and the transfer of information travels a lot faster and they solidify faster. And you also can absorb more. So there isn't quite as much of a restriction on how much you can absorb when it's in play. And children absorb information like that much information per day. It's unbelievable. So it's a valuable consideration that if you're trying to teach somebody a lot, that if you sometimes, you know, the more fun you can make it and the better engagement you can have without overdoing it, you might be in a really sweet spot for an accelerated learning experience.
Yeah, it was definitely something that the first time I really kind of got an understanding of it was when I was doing my grad cert in learning and teaching in higher ed, and also my colleague who I worked with, she was big on creating play in her lectures. You know, we're talking university lectures here, like we're not talking about young school kids, but when she noticed it, that when she included games in her lectures, like how much better the students learnt. And yeah, I found that really interesting too, like including fun things in the lectures, how much more stimulating it was and how much better people were able to absorb the information. So that's the same thing that we're trying to do with horses. And we've seen it in the online course, like where we've had, and I actually saw it when I was in the US recently, we had some horses who were not motivated to do the postural stuff, and I'm there to teach them postural stuff, and the horses are like, I don't want to do it, I don't want to move, I don't want to walk. And it was a part of meeting them where they were at for some of them. And then this one horse, he was just like, arena, shut down. And so often play involves treats initially, but it doesn't always. Like with Ellie on the weekend, it didn't involve treats. She just needed to express herself in the round yard, have a run around, and then she was like, okay, I'm ready now. Whereas with this horse, we used the treats and we just created some interest. Even at the start, we were using a lolly wrapper, like just to create some interest in us. And then by the end, he was offering all these postures and he found some motivation in his movement because we'd given him some motivation. And we've seen that in the course where we've had horses that were really struggling with their physical body, really uncomfortable, and they haven't really wanted to do the exercises because it's just hard work or pain. And so getting them to do the exercises in a little game, like where they have to go search for things or explore objects in different positions and go around to the arena and like you said, different textures, different objects in different places, like all of a sudden their ability to try the exercises increased like massively, and their engagement, their feedback to the owners, their level of communication, yeah, it was really obvious difference once we helped them find that bit of play.
You know, it's so, I went to a Terza Hendricks clinic, and her comments, which I'd read somewhere before, but she had really good comments about the role of dopamine. And that's when I'd been reading about ADHD and the role of dopamine as a seeking response, and the fact that, you know, some horses without fantastic dopamine regulation, because you can have that in levels of you know, horses who've been affected by being stable, social isolation, or other things, you know, that play is a fantastic way of bringing sensitivity back for dopamine and the ability to seek or to be curious about things and look for them. You know, scent play is another part of that, is a really big consideration. And the other thing is, so often we're talking about not just horse to horse, we're talking about horse to person play as well, but the expression of natural behaviors is 1/5 of the equine welfare domain model. You know, so that's there used to be like 5, freedom from hunger and thirst, freedom from discomfort and injury, etc. And they've shifted that to, you know, having a model where you go to the same 5 topics, but instead they talk about the fact that now you lean into like having a good diet, as opposed to saying freedom from hunger and thirst. You know, we're raising the standard. And also that quadrant about social expression has come to include play, and the ability to emotionally regulate and be adaptable in herd settings. So those kind of reflections from play are very valuable, and they're recognized not just in, you know, a space for having fun, but they're a vital part of your horse's welfare.
Yeah, and it just, like you said too, it creates curiosity in the horse. And like I was like, oh, maybe that's why Jelly is starting to explore things a little bit more. So he would never have went out if the gate was open, and he would never have tested the gate to see if it was open. But now, probably because I'm encouraging him to be more curious and give more feedback, he will test the gate now and see if it's open, and he will let himself out now and go and explore. Whereas before he just wouldn't have done that. Like he would be like, no, I don't test anything, you know. But it's really interesting how that curiosity, you know, it's a really healthy thing for horses, I think. Like Ellie, when she walked through the obstacles on the weekend, she sniffed every obstacle. She pushed them over. She walks through the corridor, sniffs the whole corridor, gets to the end, puts her head straight up, rings the bell. You know, no fear, nothing, just like exploring everything that she could possibly explore, looking at herself in the mirror, like touching everything in the mirror to like explore. And that's such a healthy trait for horses to have that often they don't get to continue on with. And then how that then, just like you said, carries over to their ability to learn is so, so valuable. And
I
just
feel like,
given that
yeah,
opportunity.
the examples I can think of now that are so fun that I thought were so much fun was a time that I was like encouraging a horse that I had at the time to be more curious, like his counterpart, who's Charlie, who's insanely curious. You know, if you open the car boot, he's coming to sniff every shopping bag that you have. Like,
Yeah.
chances you have a treat in here. You know, he'll do anything. He puts his head through the door to sniff the coffee machine. He's so
Yeah.
exploratory. But the other horse who was with him was opening up because of his influence. And I would start scratching the ground in my house yard and be really focused. Like I'd get on my knees and like sniff the ground and be like, oh, this is a really interesting spot. And then I would put a few, like maybe a slice of carrot on the ground. And when I opened the gate, like I could see, I started doing the
They
carrot on
wanted
the
to
ground,
explore.
but they watched me like sniff the ground and they would come and look at it. And I did that a few times. And that's when I started leaving a treat there to be like, oh, there's extra something in it for you sometimes. Like there might be a few oats or a bit of carrot. But they had watched me from over the fence before I opened the gate.
What is she exploring? I want to see.
Yeah, and it's that. And then it got to the point where I might be like, oh, like I'd scratch something like the table and be like, oh, what's this? And like, I'm going to have a smell of it. And like, I would over exaggerate my own breath. Like, I'd be like, smell it. And they would come in and be like, oh, it must be interesting if you're doing that. So there's just so much, yeah, just so much there to explore and have fun with.
Yeah, and we do see horses, like I gave the example this morning of my horses having a good run around, but we do see that in herd situations. I mean, sometimes it shouldn't be happening all the time. So I think when it's happening all the time, there have been studies to say that excessive play can be a sign of stress. So for horses like overly chasing another horse or overly trying to go at another horse or yeah, like there's kind of they seem to be playing a lot. In a younger horse, that can be normal because that's part of exploring being a younger horse. But in an older horse, sometimes that can be a sign of stress. So, we have to be mindful of that. But yeah, I mean, horse to horse play is pretty, common. And so what kind of things do we see with that?
So often that might present as bucking or rearing together, especially, or running together, mock fighting, sometimes real fighting, when they get a little bit escalated and the adrenaline peaks, chasing each other. Often they
Bowling
will,
together.
yeah. And for shocker in the paddock, if someone rolls, he comes and like props in front of them. They're like, leave me alone. But it's interactive. And so an interesting thing that I learned at an Elsa Sinclair clinic is the idea that play is reciprocal. So sometimes play can end when one horse says, I don't feel like playing anymore, and the other horse is pushing. That's not play. But play is quite reciprocal. So if you see them together, and one horse asks for a break and the other horse, you see them turn their head the other way, that's a very good example of play.
Healthy play.
Of healthy play, yeah. And also playing, often they're experimenting with movement when they're loose in a space as well. So that's a big indicator that you're getting play. It's definitely a marker of social well-being and stress. You want some play, but like you said, you don't want it to be everything. I have a horse with a very high play drive currently. And so it's better when he has lots of people to engage with because he can get his fill. But he also reduces significantly if I've offered him enough stimulation.
Yeah. Yeah, and
You know,
that's if you have a horse with a high play drive and then you have one that's lower, like you have a young horse with an older horse, then to balance that out, you need to offer them something yourselves, like whether it's taking for a walk or, doing some exploration. Like I had a story last week. This was quite funny. This little young horse was always jumping out of the paddock, and he was still on his mum. And she got kicked off an agistment because he jumped into their tennis court, and he was just always jumping out of the paddock. And so she actually had an animal communicator like talk to him and say like, why do you keep jumping out of the paddock? And he's like, I'm so bored, like I want to do something. So then she just started taking him for little walks just around the property. I think she said, daily or very regularly, and then he just stopped jumping out. Like he was just looking for stimulation, and he didn't have enough, because horses in their natural environment would have a lot of stimulation. They're often moving to a new area. They have a big herd dynamics. There's a lot of stuff often happening. There's a lot of variation, or they just get enough movement as well to also suffice for mental stimulation. So yeah, that was quite a funny little
That
one
is.
about just giving them enough stimulation to keep them mentally happy.
Interesting. I mean, yeah.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, and then once you really start thinking about what you're seeing physically in their body when they're playing. So I know, for example, Charlie, when he's playing, he's currently playing with he's 15 now, and he's playing with a much younger horse. And that horse has a play drive that's quite relative to him. It's a young Brumby that's come into, domestic life, and they play very hard. And even though Charlie's in good form, he recently twinged himself a little bit, and an appropriate thing to do might have been, to give them a rest, etc., and separate them. And then I can see that they begin to play a little too hard, and he'll compensate for that. So, my plan today is probably to give him a rest, have a little bit of separation, so that his body has a bit of time to catch up and not be under stress. But overall, the level of engagement that he has through his back is, it's unbelievable compared to when he isn't in a position to engage in the way that he has been. So his gluteal muscle, his middle gluteal muscle, his back, his top line, his thoracic sling become loaded appropriately in the way that they play. And so it depends on how your horse is playing too.
Movement too. Like it's not like when we ride, we're often doing a certain posture for a fair length of time. Whereas in that play, it's like a few seconds here and a few seconds there of different functional movement stimulations.
Definitely. And so one specific benefit to that is neuromuscular coordination. If you have the ability to do a movement, take a period of rest, which is very important for programming movement, that allows for you to, have a massive benefit while you're playing. You then also have the ability to, activate your core and play with balance, have a little rest. And so those, they're just being built up in the way that we remind ourselves to adjust our posture. So you're coming in and out of a state that's really beneficial with rest in between. Often they'll be exploring their full range of motion, whether that's rearing, bucking, galloping. Like a hard, long gallop opens up your legs and your barrel and your neck and your back. Like
diaphragm.
Yeah, it's a good big movement. It's good for your body, motions, lotion. Also your postural stabilizers and global movers. So, when I'm watching Charlie, I enjoy seeing that, he often has a little weight shift to his haunches, and I see his core activate and his thoracic sling lifts when he kind of sucks back, and then he comes forward without moving his feet. His barrel and body has adjusted posturally through his back and his thoracic sling and his neck. He's able to telescope truly forward and play with his friend, and then he comes back. And that's such a strong example of an ability to establish, and now he is reinforcing a healthy movement pattern. So and it is important to consider that your horse still needs to have function. So it's not that you put them
Yeah.
out there and they're going to develop. It's like everything where
You need to check that they've like helped them have optimal function, so then when they play, they're actually getting benefit from it in a
yeah,
positive way, not just playing in a compensatory pattern that's going to set up more stress and discomfort.
yeah, definitely. And it's, even what you're talking about with those horses, bringing play into the pole work, the proprioceptive feedback that they get is enhanced because they're in their body, and their sense of where they are becomes really heightened. So you've got this ongoing mixture of like vestibular input, so your balance and coordination, your cognitive flexibility and curiosity, and you're having fun exploring, the boundaries around what does and doesn't, well, what feels good. And then you stop at the point when, that movement becomes too much for you.
Yeah, it's really feeding back into postural stability and
Yeah.
enhancing all of the inputs into postural stability. So it can be an extremely like valuable place if it's within a healthy, and the horse has the ability to play within that kind of range, then it's so beneficial for that. So, there's lots of different ways that you can incorporate play. Like people might only think that you can do it with treats or things, but putting different obstacles around and changing those frequently. So, I've done one like where I've put an umbrella and cardboard boxes, and if they need a bit of encouragement, you can use treats around it. But you want a horse that's happy to go and explore those things regardless of whether there's treats there or not, like they want to see what is that cardboard box, and what's that new ball that I have in my paddock, or what's that new thing that's hanging from the tree. I haven't noticed that there before. You can put rocks in a milk bottle, or you can put treats in a milk bottle, so they have to move the milk bottle around to get the treats out. You can buy little balls that you can hang up, and people have done like strings of apples and carrots, and they're interacting with the treats in that way. I also have a client who takes her horses out. So she'll go on the Can-Am, or she used to go on the scooter, and they'd run free with her. And it's beautiful. They're the happiest horses. Like, I actually think she has the happiest horses because they have heaps of variation. They get a lot of opportunity for play with each other, and they have a strong play drive within themselves as well. And yeah, they get to go on explorations because her property is big enough that they can go loose. And she will sometimes plant things around and encourage them to go searching, under witches' hats and exploring things that she puts around the place. So there's lots of ways that you can set it up. You can like make snuffle mats where you put treats in the mats and they have to snuffle through, or you can wrap stuff in a towel and they have to unwrap the towel to like find the treat, or you can do liberty, where it's actually an interaction with you.
Yeah.
You can also teach them to do target training where they follow the target. You just want them to stay aware within their body. So the thing that I look for is I don't like it when they become really fixated on the treat, because for me then they're not staying within their body, they're not staying within their neurological system, and they're doing it because they're a little bit stressed potentially and they just really want the treat. So I don't like it when they get obsessed with getting a treat. Yeah, it can be very stressful. So monitor that, keep the signs of stress low so they can, like yesterday when I hopped on Ellie, I had treats in my pocket and she asked for it a couple of times, but she wasn't fixated on getting the treat. Like it was like if she did something hard, she would look for it, but she didn't look for it for everything that she did. And she didn't need me to give it to her every second. And it wasn't creating stress, me withholding the treat. So I think that's really important, that withholding a treat is not creating stress, or seeking the treat is not creating stress. Do you have any other examples? Oh, sorry, I just have one more. So I had a horse, I think I've talked about him before, and he was rehabbing for kissing spine, and he was rearing a lot, and he was
Yeah.
struggling with the exercises. So I had a rehab plan for him, like, I want you to do these certain exercises, and he was not able to do them. He was rearing and getting really unhappy and biting at her. And one week I went there and I'm like, oh, how'd you go? And she's like, oh, really good. And I'm like, oh, cool. Like, what have you done? And she's like, I just decided to do everything at liberty. And so I made his exercises all fun and play, because he was a young stock horse, so he was super intelligent. And so he didn't want to just be thinking about his body all the time, which was unstable and unsafe. But when you took the thought outside of his body and gave him something else to focus on, then he would move his body, to do that thing. So like she would have him stepping up on different obstacles and following her and running after her. And so he was doing all the stuff, but he didn't know he was doing all the stuff. And then she'd take him out for a walk in the bush where he's stepping over logs and sticks and, working his proprioception without him having to think about working his proprioception. Like he was just doing it. And so that was probably, when I really thought, oh, there has to be some fun in their rehab. Otherwise, they can get really sour, and it can become, and I know myself, I get really bored when I'm
Me
doing
too.
the same exercises. I'm always looking for something more stimulating.
Yeah.
Otherwise I'll just stop doing it, especially if it hurts. I'm like, I don't want to keep doing this thing that hurts if it's not fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you have any other examples of play?
Not that I can really think of. I feel like we've gone into lots of different examples, but I just think that if you get to know your horse and you understand if there's something that motivates them, it's,
Or
yeah, and it can be a gift to offer something fun, it's another part of making sure your horse's needs are met. And it's so much fun. If it's
yeah,
something that doesn't
makes
feel
you
fun
laugh.
for you in the beginning, it absolutely does once you both click on. It's definitely something that, yeah, it can bring you a lot of joy.
Yeah, when you find the thing that your horse thinks is fun as
Yeah.
well.
And that too, often you see the shift in mentality sometimes for an owner, and that's reflected in the horse, who you might constantly be having thoughts or language around criticizing, or not criticizing them, but pointing out flaws as you aim for something bigger because you're aware of, things that you're trying to improve. But a shift in your mentality is often reflected in your behavior, your posture, your interaction. And horses are so sensitive that it's worth loving on them, having that tone of love or fun when you're interacting with them too.
Yeah, definitely. And what are some things that people do need to be mindful of with play?
Safety for the
Yeah,
handler,
definitely.
definitely.
I've worn it when I used to play with Henry, because he was very exuberant and he loved to do liberty and chase me. I would wear a helmet and a stick because he never touched me, but just because he'd get so excited that I just had to keep myself safe.
Yeah, yeah, and there's just lots of examples. If you are particularly starting to you're in the start of, like, I want to introduce some play, you might see some behaviors you weren't expecting. They're more explosive. Horses definitely accommodate for us and look after us. So when the energies come up, and if we don't currently have a system where the horses has an available regulated higher energy. So like there's a difference between bringing your energy up to, for a hard movement, or like extra energy or something in a way that's very regulated, and it means that you have a lot of influence over the way that you can direct that energy,
Yeah.
as they come up into a different state of arousal, because it is a state of arousal in play. as opposed to when they're relaxed, you might just meet with some behaviors you haven't seen before. So keeping yourself safe, whether that means distance. So, I've seen some people when they start with Liberty, they're inside the round yard and the horse is on the outside of, some on the other side of the fence. And certainly introducing food, I truly believe that the first time you introduce food, you should be on the other side of the fence, because it gives you a lot of control, for meaning that the horse can't get carried away and walk over you. It's a really good way of doing things. So yeah, looking after yourself and your safety, and it's important.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, a horse that is has a healthy state of play or arousal, they can also bring themselves down super fast as well. Like that's one thing I noticed with
Yeah.
Lily and Jelly, both of them, they can go up into a state of quite heightened play, but then they can come down really quickly and easily. And so that's showing a kind of healthy state of their neurological system, that they can go up and down really easily and quickly, as opposed to the horse that gets escalated and then kind of loses their mind a bit. They don't have that emotional regulation at that level. And so it's important that we're looking for emotional regulation, both in the ability to relax, but also the ability to play. So I'd also say just be mindful that a horse that's overplaying can be a sign of stress in her dynamics, and that if we're playing with treats, it can create stress. So just be mindful that it's not becoming a stressful situation, because they're always searching or offering things for the treat. Again, a healthy response to a treat would be that they can switch it on and off, like they can stop, they can control themselves when you have a treat, and they could stand there and you have treats in their pocket, and they know that that's not a time for treats. Also just be mindful of a horse that is in tension and brace, and especially if they don't have healthy function, then there can be that excessive motion can be putting them into a sign of tension and brace, and then create problems. So you want to like optimize their function, prior, or you keep the play within their function for a while until they get to the point where they can explore it beyond the movement and bounce back from that, like not hurt themselves. I would also say play is not trick training. So, teaching your horse tricks is not play. Play is
It's an intrinsic motivation, source of motivation. It's very deep. It's a really core. Yeah, I think the word intrinsic is very important to know. It's just like, it's not about what's outside of you or what you're going to earn. It's seeking a way of feeling, which might be fun, enjoyable, powerful, or proud in the moment.
Yeah, they're not just trying to offer you things to get the treat. Because I've seen horses that become, and dogs as well, that become like, they'll offer you every trick in the book that they know to get the treat, and that's not play. That's just trying to get the treat. And to me, that can be very strict. I'd love to measure cortisol in those situations, because I think that can be quite stressful for them, trying to figure out what do I need to do to get the treat. And there's been studies in mice that have kind of looked at the situations like that where it can be quite stressful. And then obviously too much play can create injury. So just being aware of where your horse's current ability to play is, and there's lots of ways to play that don't involve crazy running and stupid stuff. There's lots of ways we can engage them mentally, regardless of the physical level that they're at. So you just need to become a little bit inventive, imaginative. There's like some cool Facebook groups out there that have lots of ideas. And then like ask your horse, like, what do you enjoy? Like look for their level of enjoyment in things that you do. Like I said, Jelly's not a huge fan of going for a walk out, whereas like Henry and Mooney used to love going for a walk out. Like that was really mentally stimulating and fun for them. They'd go exploring. So whereas Jelly's enjoying the liberty. Ellie just enjoys having time at the moment to express herself, so having a break to express herself. So each individual horse is going to be different, and don't expect that your horse has to play in a way that, like Patch used to hate liberty. She thought it was a waste of time. That was not fun for her. Riding out bridleless and bareback was heaps of fun for her. So just look for those indicators that your horse is enjoying it.
Absolutely. I feel very motivated. Conversations around play always make me, I have half an hour before I have to do anything else. So I'll probably walk out and try and do something fun. So I hope
it reminds me that I don't do enough I don't do enough play. So it's a very important reminder.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, have fun. With that, did you have any takeaways that you wanted to?
No, I just hope this episode motivates somebody else to, go out and play.
Yeah, we're always talking about the hard stuff, and we often get, bogged down in all the postural observations and how to recognize all the challenges with your horse. And so, yeah, I think this kind of just brings in another aspect to all of that. So, yeah, thank you for joining myself, Dr. Raquel Butler and Sophie Vanderberg in today's Play podcast. Enjoy your horse time. Please subscribe to the Equine Functional Posture podcast so you don't miss our weekly episodes, and give us a 5-star rating so we can share more valuable insights. And we would actually love for you to share some of the ways that you play with your horse, or the way that your horse likes to play. So yeah, send us an email. We'd love to hear some of your stories, or jump on either of our Facebook pages, Equine Postural Aid or Integrated Veterinary Therapeutics, and share some of your play stories. We would love that.
Wonderful. Well, we hope to hear from you, and we will see you in the next exciting episode.